For 6.5 years, he played the grieving husband, the trembling voice on television, the tears that came right on cue. He begged the cameras, please just come home. The world believed him. The reporters comforted him. The neighbors prayed for him. But every time he walked down those stairs, his shoes clicked against the concrete that hid her. His missing wife wasn't missing at all. She was right there beneath his feet. And every desperate plea he made to bring her home was said whilst he was standing on her grave. I have never once in nearly 30 years of being together had a finger on her. The most I've ever done to her is ever having a tight cuddle, loving the bones off her. One day my wife is going to turn back up, or she's going to get in touch somehow, one way or another. This will all come out, and in time it'll all prove that I've done nothing wrong. Tina Satchwell was 45 years old when she disappeared in March 2017. Born Tina Dingon on the 30th of November, 1972 in Fermoy, County Cork, Ireland. She was a petite woman standing 5 feet 4 inches tall with blonde shoulder-length hair and striking blue eyes. She had a Tweety bird tattoo on her chest and a belly button piercing that friends and family knew well. Those who knew her described her as bright, bubbly, and beautiful. She had a warmth about her that drew people in. But Tina's early life had been complicated. She was raised by her grandmother, Florence Dingon, believing Florence was her mother until she was old enough for confirmation. When she went searching for her birth certificate, she discovered the truth. Her biological mother was Mary Collins, whom she had believed was her sister. The revelation hurt deeply, though Tina remained devoted to the grandmother who had raised her with love. Fashion was Tina's passion. She had what friends called an expensive eye for clothes and jewelry. Upstairs in her home, she kept hundreds of outfits on racks, some brand new with tags still attached. She would buy items, wear them, then resell them at car boot sales across County Cork. It wasn't just about the clothes. The car boot sales were social events where she connected with a regular community of vendors and shoppers. She was always impeccably dressed, often matching her Chihuahua Ruby's outfits to her own. Her dogs Ruby and Heidi, along with her parrot Valentine, were the children she never had. Tina was rarely seen without her beloved pets. She loved animals deeply, a trait that traced back to childhood when cats and dogs constantly followed her around Fermoy. She was a keen swimmer, loved the beach, and was drawn to Yoel's coastal beauty when she and her husband Richard moved there in May 2016. Those closest to Tina understood she had layers to her personality. Whilst she appeared bubbly and social, she was actually quite shy and kept to herself. Her GP of nearly 2 decades described her as always friendly, open, a great communicator who always enjoyed good health with absolutely no conditions that could end her life prematurely. She had no documented mental health issues, no psychiatric diagnosis. The death of her brother Tom by suicide in 2012 devastated Tina profoundly. She bought Ruby the Chihuahua in 2014, specifically to help cope with the grief. Tina met Richard Satchwell on the 3rd of March 1989 in Colville near Leicester, England. She was just 17. He was 22. Richard told his brother upon first seeing her that he would marry her. He described her as his trophy wife, someone who was out of his league. They began dating quickly. Richard proposed in October 1989 at Mount Pleasant overlooking Ulladulla Bay. They married on Tina's 20th birthday, the 30th of November, 1991 in Oldham, England. But the marriage came at a cost. Richard's family was anti-Irish and gave him an ultimatum. Choose them or Tina. He chose Tina and never spoke to his mother again. None of his family attended their wedding. Whilst this might seem romantic, it was the first sign of the isolation that would come to define their relationship. Richard, a lorry driver from Leicester, was by all accounts obsessed with Tina. He said he worshipped her, was besotted with her, and considered her physically perfect, his beautiful Irish rose. He knew intimate details about her body, her measurements, her clothing sizes. He claimed to run baths for her 7 nights a week with as many suds as possible, towel her off, apply baby oil, to her skin and pedicure her feet. But this devotion masked something darker. Tina's half-sister, Lorraine Howard, would later testify that Richard was obsessive, possessive, controlling, and just odd. He would criticize every friend Tina made, finding fault with each one until her social circle grew smaller and smaller. He wanted to know where she was at all times. Tina confided to Lorraine that she felt trapped. She could never leave because he would follow her to the ends of the earth. The couple's world became just the two of them, exactly as Richard wanted it. The Satchwells moved from England to Fermoy, County Cork in the early 1990s. In 2016, they sold their Fermoy home and bought a house at 3 Grattan Street in Youghal for €52,000, moving in May that year. The move further isolated Tina from her family and the Fermoy community where she was well known and loved. In Youghal, she was barely known. Neighbors rarely saw her. Without Richard, financially the couple struggled. They lived on social welfare benefits, with Richard listed as Tina's dependent. Their joint bank account was constantly overdrawn. Richard had 14 previous criminal convictions between 1999 and 2004, including larceny, social welfare fraud, theft, and public order offenses. In December 2002, he served a month in Cork prison for social welfare fraud. Sunday, the 19th of March, 2017. Tina and Richard attended a car boot sale in Carrigtwohill, County Cork, approximately 35 kilometers from their Youghal home. Tina was in good spirits. She purchased a beautiful black jacket, a dress, and expensive perfume. She spoke with her friend John Keeley, who joked about her meeting another man. Tina responded firmly, "I have one man only." She loved him so much and she wouldn't touch another man. These were the last words anyone outside her home would hear her speak. Friday, the 24th of March, 2017. For days after Tina was last seen, Richard Satchwell drove 43 kilometers to Fermoy Garda Station, bypassing his local Youghal station to report that his wife had left home 4 days earlier. Garda Connor Gately described Richard as matter of fact and not overly emotive. Richard explained he had waited because he thought Tina needed time to get her head straight and assumed she'd gone to stay with family in Fermoy. Richard told Gardaí that on Monday morning, the 20th of March, he had made Tina breakfast around 9:20. Tea, toast, and his special fruit and yogurt. He said she asked him to drive to Aldi in Dungarvan, 30 kilometers away, to buy fish and parrot food for their parrot, Valentine. He claimed he left around 10 o'clock or 10:30 in the morning and returned around noon to find Tina gone, along with 2 suitcases and €26,000 in cash, allegedly stored in a box in the attic. When Richard learned that Tina's family hadn't seen her, he expressed mild concern, but maintained she had left voluntarily. The case was initially treated as a casual inquiry about someone who had left home, not a formal missing person investigation. It wasn't until the 11th of May, 2017, nearly 2 months after Tina disappeared, that Richard filed a formal missing person report with Garda James Butler, providing photographs for media appeals. But Richard didn't just report Tina missing and wait quietly. He embarked on an extraordinary media campaign that would span years. Between June 2017 and March 2018, he gave at least 14 recorded media interviews, making himself uber available to television, radio, and newspaper journalists. He appeared on RT's Crime Call, Primetime Investigates, TV3 Virgin Media News, Ireland AM, The Ray Darcy Show, Cork's Red FM, and numerous other outlets. His most memorable appearance came on the 25th of July, 2017 on RT Crime Call. In a tearful performance, Richard looked directly into the camera lens and said, "Tina, come home. I'm nobody mad at you. My arms are open. The pets are missing. I just can't go on not knowing. You need only ring the guards. Let people know that you're all right." To viewers, it seemed like the desperate plea of a devoted husband. Richard told TV3 News on the 14th of July, 2017, "I never lifted a finger to her in their 28 years together." He claimed repeatedly that Tina would turn up or get in touch. Eventually, he said he'd be willing to take a lie detector test, though he refused when actually offered one on live radio, claiming to be feeling tired and unwell. Throughout it all, Richard maintained a narrative. He portrayed himself as a devoted husband caring for an unstable wife. He claimed that after her brother Tom's death in 2012, Tina had become increasingly troubled and violent. This narrative was entirely contradicted by family, friends, and medical records. In the days and weeks following Tina's disappearance, Richard's behavior raised eyebrows. On the 30th of March, 2017, just 10 days after Tina vanished, he texted her cousin Sarah Howard, offering her a chest freezer. "Sarah, do you want our big chest freezer?" The next day, he advertised it on the Done Deal website. "Large chest freezer, free to take away. Working. Perfect, just needs a clean." By late April and early May 2017, Richard was selling Tina's belongings at car boot sales, the very venues where she had spent happy hours. He sold her clothes, her Dr. Martens boots, bags, and accessories. When friends asked where Tina was, he told elaborate lies. She had a terrible infection from dry rot in the house and had gone to England for treatment. She was very sick and had lost 4 stone. She had a serious respiratory illness and couldn't attend car boot sales anymore. The items Tina had purchased on that last Sunday, the black jacket and dress, were found hanging over a door in their living room unworn. She never got the chance to enjoy them. The first major Garda search of 3 Grattan Street occurred on the 7th of June 2017, less than 3 months after Tina's disappearance. Sergeant John Sheehan had already formed the opinion by late May that something criminal may have occurred. A search warrant was obtained on the basis that Tina may have been injured or incapacitated in a criminal event. Gardaí spent approximately 12 hours conducting what was described as a thorough formal search of the property. Garda Catherine, the home extensively. The photographs would prove haunting. Years later, they clearly showed relatively new unpainted stairs, fresh plaster board on the side of the stairs, and a new red brick wall underneath the stairwell. Forensic scientist Dr. Edward Connolly used luminol to test for blood throughout the house. The chemical reacts with blood and glows blue, but no traces were found anywhere. Not in the living room, not on the stairs, not in Richard's car. Without blood evidence, and without any other obvious signs of violence, the search team collected some items, including Richard's laptop and mobile devices, but they did not break through the concrete under the stairs. They did not use a cadaver dog. They did not excavate. The house was filthy and unkempt, with dog feces covering floors and furniture, unwashed dishes piled up, and a bird cage that hadn't been cleaned in ages. In the years that followed, Gardaí conducted extensive searches across County Cork. On the 19th of August, 2017, the Garda Water Unit, Irish Coast Guard, and Army personnel searched Youghal Harbour at low tide and Scrubland at Gulf Links Road. In March 2018, a major operation focused on Mitchell's Wood in Castlemartyr. Over 60 trained Gardaí, Army engineers, and cadaver dogs spent nearly 2 weeks searching the 40-acre woodland site. No-fly zone was established, but nothing was found. The investigation pursued over 400 lines of inquiry over the years. There were 65 reported sightings of Tina in Ireland and abroad. All were investigated. All proved negative. Over 170 witness statements were taken. 100 hours of CCTV footage was reviewed. The investigation seemed to be going nowhere. Then in August 2021, everything changed. Superintendent Anne-Marie Tumulty was appointed senior investigating officer, her first time in this role, along with Detective Garda Dave Kelleher as incident room coordinator. A fresh team from Cork North and West Division began a comprehensive cold case review. They re-examined all 400 lines of inquiry. They reviewed all CCTV footage again. They reanalyzed the 170 plus witness statements. And most importantly, they finally examined the Digital devices seized back in 2017. The laptop seized in 2017 had sat unexamined for years. When Detective Garda Dave Kelleher finally analyzed it in late 2021, he found something chilling. On Friday, the 24th of March, 2017, 4 days after Tina's disappearance and the same day Richard reported her missing, someone had searched for quicklime on the laptop at 9:08 in the evening. They watched a YouTube video titled Quicklime and water reaction twice. Quicklime is a substance used in building, but it's also known to aid decomposition and suppress odor in mass burials. Mobile phone data extracted in February 2022 provided the second breakthrough. CCTV footage from Yoel Post Office showed Richard collecting social welfare at 11:10 on the morning of the 20th of March. Not in Dungarvan as he claimed, but in Yoel. Mobile phone location data proved he returned home immediately afterwards and remained there from approximately 11:10 until 12:50. This 100-minute window contradicted everything Richard had said about his movements that morning. Location data proved Richard had been home during the time he claimed to be shopping in Dungarvan. The text offering Sarah Howard the freezer was found. Email and phone records established a timeline that contradicted virtually everything Richard had claimed. By February 2022, Superintendent Tumulty had formed the conclusion that Tina Satchwell was not a living person and had met with death via unlawful means, but they still didn't have a body. In September 2022, Superintendent Tumulty commissioned Dr. Niamh McCulloch, a forensic archaeologist specializing in the search and recovery of concealed human remains, to review the case. Dr. McCulloch's report, submitted in September 2023, was the final piece. She noted that research shows domestic homicide perpetrators commonly create false narratives and file misleading missing person reports. Female victims of domestic homicide are typically disposed of closer to home than male victims, most within 1 kilometer. The structural changes to the Satchwell home visible in the 2017 photographs were red flags. She recommended an invasive search using ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs. On the evening of the 10th of October, 2023, Gardaí arrived at 3 Grattan Street with building contractors, excavators, and a full forensic team. Richard Satchwell was arrested on suspicion of murder at 5 o'clock in the evening. The search began in earnest with a cadaver dog named Fern, a Springer Spaniel, and her handler. Fern showed immediate interest in the area under the stairs. Detective Garda Brian Barry, a ballistics and forensics expert, noticed something crucial. The red brick wall under the stairs looked like it was built by someone who didn't know how to build walls. Using strong lights, the team examined the area closely. They lifted the old 70s-style linoleum flooring and immediately saw what they were looking for: a rectangular patch of different colored concrete, visibly newer than the surrounding floor. Around 9 o'clock in the evening on the 11th of October 2023, they broke through the concrete with jackhammers. At approximately 64 centimeters depth, they found black plastic sheeting. The excavation stopped immediately. The forensic archaeologist was called. The next morning, a human hand was uncovered. Then gradually, carefully, the full burial was excavated. At 11:30 on the morning of the 12th of October 2023, Assistant State Pathologist Dr. Margot Bolster arrived at the scene. By noon, Richard Satchwell was rearrested, this time at a bus stop in Yoel. That evening, he was charged with murder. When the charge was read to him, he gave a cryptic reply: guilty or not guilty. The remains were taken to Cork University Hospital. On the 13th of October 2023, dental records from Tina's Fermoy dentist confirmed what everyone already knew: the body buried under the stairs for 2,396 days was Tina Satchwell. Her Tweety bird tattoo was still visible on her chest. In the left pocket of her dressing gown was her wallet containing her public services card and various store loyalty cards. After Tina's body was discovered, Richard's story changed dramatically. He provided a new narrative to Gardaí. He claimed he came in from the garden shed and found Tina at the bottom of the stairs scraping plasterboard with a chisel. He said Tina flew at him with the chisel, trying to stab him in the head. He fell backwards with Tina on top of him. To defend himself, he grabbed the belt of her dressing gown and held it at her neck until she got heavier. Within seconds, she fell limp and died in his arms. He claimed he held her body for 20 to 30 minutes whilst their dogs, Ruby and Heidi, licked at her. He laid her on the couch initially, leaving her there for a day or two. When the dogs kept going to her body, he moved it to the chest freezer in their garden shed. On the 22nd or 23rd of March, the freezer was unplugged. He was using it for storage, not refrigeration. Richard said he then began digging under the stairs in their sitting room. He said he worked like a robot on automatic. The digging took from light until dark, leaving all his knuckles bleeding by the time he finished. The grave was unusually deep for a clandestine burial, 64 to 84 centimeters over 2.5 ft in sandy soil. On the 26th of March, 2017, Mother's Day Sunday, Richard said he retrieved Tina's body from the freezer and buried her. She was wrapped in black plastic sheeting that they had used as ground covering at car boot sales. Her body was positioned face down and she was still wearing her dressing gown over her pajamas. The dressing gown belt was wrapped around her in a very unusual position over the left side of her neck, under her right shoulder and arm, under her body, then knotted on the front of her chest. It was not threaded through the dressing gown loops. Richard claimed he wanted to bury her with dignity. He said he went to buy roses but could only find tulips because it was Mother's Day. He threw the flowers into the grave. They were never found. He claimed he placed her wedding ring in the pocket of her bathrobe so she would know the hand that killed her was also the hand that loved her. The ring was never located. He filled the grave with soil, then poured approximately 1 m over 3 feet of concrete over it. He later built a red brick wall alongside the stairs and installed new plasterboard to conceal the area. Richard Satchwell's trial began in late April 2025 at the Central Criminal Court in Dublin. The trial lasted 23 days with testimony from over 50 witnesses. Richard pleaded not guilty to murder. Lead prosecutor Geraldine Small characterized Richard as an arch manipulator who was shamelessly brazen. To the very end, the forensic evidence was compelling. Dr. Margot Bolster found no fractures anywhere on Tina's skeleton. The quicklime search 4 days after Tina's disappearance was damning. Evidence of consciousness of guilt. The CCTV and phone location data proved Richard had lied about his movements. Perhaps most powerful was the parade of Richard's own media appearances. 14 video clips shown to the jury of him making tearful appeals, professing his love, insisting Tina was still out there somewhere. Defense counsel Brendan Grehan argued lack of intent. Richard exercised his right not to testify. The jury began deliberating on the afternoon of Tuesday, the 27th of May, 2025. They deliberated for a total of 9 hours and 28 minutes. 3 days later, at approximately 12:25 on Friday, they returned with a verdict. Guilty of murder, unanimous. Richard showed no emotion. Behind him, Tina's family wept. Mr. Justice Paul McDermott imposed the mandatory sentence for murder, life imprisonment. Outside the Central Criminal Court after the verdict, Sarah Howard spoke for the family. Tina was a kind, loving, and gentle soul who loved her animals like they loved her. And that's the way we want her remembered. Today, as a family, we finally have justice for Tina. When Tina's remains were discovered in October 2023, over 200 people attended a vigil in Yole. Many brought their dogs in tribute to Tina's love of animals. Half of her ashes were buried with her brother Tom. Half were buried with her beloved grandmother Florence. The case ultimately succeeded because of persistence. When Superintendent Anne-Marie Tumulty took over in August 2021, her methodical re-examination of every piece of evidence ultimately brought Tina home. Tina is now at rest with her brother Tom and her beloved grandmother Florence. She is remembered as she truly was. Kind, gentle, loving, with an infectious smile and a passion for fashion and animals. She deserved better than the life Richard Satchwell trapped her in. She certainly deserved better than the death he gave her and the grave beneath, the stairs where he buried her. But she also deserves to be remembered. And now, thanks to her family's courage in speaking out, she will be